Well, it's been a week since I've done a video. I have been busy. I think in this first video I'm doing, we're going to look at the plants I've been moving. So we've got a tetrapanax here, which has just been moved 2 days ago. I did cut a lot of the lower leaves off. Typically don't like being moved, the tetrapanax. I decided to do it this time of year, just due to, obviously they're gonna go into shock a bit. If it was, spring's a good time, but summer definitely know they're gonna drop all their leaves. Temperature's too high. So my thought behind it moving it now is the ground's still warm. We can move it. If it drops all its leaves, it's going to drop them in the next month or so anyway. So it's no big deal, and that'll give it a little bit of warmth to the roots. They can sort of establish before winter kicks in properly, and hopefully next year that should start growing away quite nicely. So this one is, well, the leaves are probably about 7 foot, but the trunk itself is probably about 5.5 foot. So this was originally over here in this corner, which when I first planted it was getting a lot of sun, but now it is, with everything else growing around it that was in shade, and it was constantly bending forward and it had a right lean on it. So I had to move that. I did clear all this corner out because everything was in pots down here. So I cleared this. This is basically, there's only a few plants actually in the ground. We've got cast iron plant and a variegated fats head here. Everything else was in pots. So I have moved some of the pots back, and some of the palm trees here, these are all Kentia palms. They've been out in the shade border all summer, so I will be getting them in at some point. They've done alright, put on some decent growth. Put on some nice fronds, to be fair. So in here what I've got actually is a lot of potted pedicites, which I dug out from the border. So let's go back and see where I dug up them from. So if you can remember, we had a patch where you can see the extremes where they went to. So I've still got a couple in the ground here, but that they ran all the way around here, all the way along here to this side. So I took out a big clump in the middle and potted them up, because I'll be redistributing them in some other shady areas, because I quite like them. They do get a bit too much sun there. They look much better in the shade. Whereas there's a good example. So yeah, we'll be getting some of them pot specimens next year. I'll be keeping them in the greenhouse over winter, get them started off early, and then we'll put them in the ground next year. So yeah, we've moved this tetrapanax, and if you can remember, I had a smaller tetrapanax in this area, and it was shading everything out basically, and this is what I call the shade side, so it only gets half day sun. So I was struggling to grow anything underneath it, so I had a big canopy of leaves of the tetrapanax, and it's pretty much barren underneath because nothing else would grow because it's just too shaded. So I dug that one out and put it out the front, in the front garden, moved a load of cannas in the front and made a gap for that. So what I've done is I've put in my Chefleo Taiwaniana, which I bought earlier this year. I said I was going to keep this in the greenhouse over winter, but that's put on so much growth. I think we're going to chance it outside. I know they are hardy, but this one may well have been kept in a greenhouse all its life, so we'll see how that does over winter. So that can hopefully get through winter and bush out a bit next year, and that gives me a bit more scope to plant some nice plants in the front of that. Yeah, so with all the potted plants out the way now, the sort of tropical house plants, I'll do a video on that next. So we had quite a few gaps, so I did manage to get a few plants moved about and put in the borders where the gaps were. So I put a few cannas in the ground, even though this is the shady side, like I keep saying. I put a couple of banana cannas in and a Stuttgart, which probably prefers a bit of shade, to be fair, because you get the burn on the variegation. Looks a bit scruffy in full sun, so this was the other side of the garden, getting too much sun. So yeah, all the white patches invariably gets burnt. So yeah, we've moved a couple of tetrapanax. We've put a lot of other plants in, some smaller bedding plants, whatnot, hardy stuff in the ground. We're still going to have some a few patches at the front here. I mean, I have put this voodoo lily in, which is started to struggle. The leaves have got a bit too heavy for itself, and one has, even though I staked it up, one has snapped. So they're starting to wane a bit, and that will collapse. But that's what it does. These are hardy, so that'll come back next year and hopefully be a bit stronger. Yeah, so we've moved a lot of stuff here. And just a note with the tetrapanax, I was quite surprised that the roots didn't seem to go down deep. They'd sort of spread across the surface of the soil, just maybe only sort of 6 inches down, so it's fairly easy to move. Not too much trouble, and obviously this time of year the ground's a bit softer. We've been having a bit of rain. As we can see, the grass is starting to green up a bit. Right, so this centre bed, I talked about this as well, with all the small palms, sort of get drowned out by all the annuals, as it were. So I have already dug out a couple of clumps of colocasia in the centre here, which I've dug out. I've potted them up, so you see they're still there, just dotted about, but they're all potted up. So I'm planning to overwinter them in my summer house. I'll just keep the pots totally dry, and we'll get them started off again next year, nice and early. We did have some pumpkins in the centre here, which went all mildewy, and we did get a couple of small pumpkins off them, so we got something for Halloween. Yeah, so we had a gap in the centre, so I had to repot the foxtail palm, because it started to push its way out of the pot, and I needed a big deep pot. And yeah, so this Camerops at the star was in there, so I thought, let's get it in the ground. This is a totally hardy palm, and the roots were a good 2 foot. You know, it's wrapped around the bottom of the pot. It's a deep pot, so look, we get it in the ground, and that's a nice short dwarf palm. So eventually, that's not going to interfere too much with the boutia that side, and we've got a jabea this side, so that'll be a bit of an understory palm. I don't mind being in a little bit of shade. So yes, that went in, and you might think, what am I doing repotting palms this time of year? So I did repot a couple yesterday, so let's have a look. So I repotted the foxtail, because if you watched any of the previous videos, that started to push its way out the pot, and there's about 2 inches of root sort of above pot level, so I couldn't just top it up. I had to repot it. So that's been repotted. That's a good 6 inches deeper than the pot that's already in. Obviously, you don't want to be repotting palms this time of year unless you plan to keep them in full growth over winter, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing with this foxtail. Just opened a new spear that is going to be indoors in my purpose-built grow tent, along with a lot of other sort of more tropical palms. I did repot this Bicario Phoenix Alfredii as well, or hardy mountain coconut. So these will be going in soon. I'll also do a video on that, because I spent a couple of days building, like I say, this purpose-built grow tent indoors. So yeah, I have been busy. Again, I have been taking check of the borders, and I have moved some colocasia, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, the colocasia escalente I've found is quite hardy. I've always left some in the garden, and I don't think I've ever lost any. They've always come back, so a lot of them I've redistributed in the border, and they'll be staying in. So we've got one here, we've got one here, oh, we've got another one here, and yeah, repeated throughout. So there's a smaller one there, a couple of clumps in here, and yeah, we've got one down here as well. So that they'll all be staying in the border. I will be mulching it over, and they'll stay in the ground, and we'll see if they all come back or not, depending on how severe the winter is. Also, in the centre bed here, we had a lot of the tree lilies, which, you know, get 5-6 foot, and they were sort of taking your eye again off the palms in the centre here, which are supposed to be the main event, and they were getting hidden a bit. So the tree lilies also have been distributed in various parts of the border along here, so we'll have some nice pops of colour midsummer. I'm sure I'm forgetting things, but yeah, I've been moving a lot of stuff about. So yeah, it's just a bit of an update on what I've been doing. I'm now going to do a video on moving the house plants in, so stay tuned for that one. Thanks for watching.